Hey guys. Jordi, so as you enter your second year here, you established a lot of cultural things, kind of the way you guys want to play, setting standards. What does the evolution of that look like? As you enter year two with a pretty different roster.
Yeah, I think the key is you cannot repeat. You have to redefine things, and starting with relationships. I feel like I'm not an outsider anymore. When you show up in a new place, is you have to start getting to know people. And now, after a year under my belt, now we go into the second season that cannot be the same as first. And we're happy with the results, the development of the group. And now we went through the biggest summer of our lives, and now the summer's over. So talking to you guys, that means that it's first day of school, and we're back at it, and that's the exciting part. Exciting part to go into camp, compete for something. Everybody will have something to fight for, and then ended up having a roster at some point, with 15 roster players, 3 two-ways, all that stuff, which it's exciting, and I don't want to put my mind into, I want the players to show us, what can they do and how hard they can play and compete, and that's the most exciting part.
How are you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
All right. Curious, and this is, I guess, for each of you. What have the conversations with Cam been like? I mean, obviously there was a lot of discussion around his free agency. Now that he's back, but he's back on a contract that generally indicates an eventual departure. What have the conversations been like? What's his headspace like? First, Jordi, and then Sean.
Yeah, my conversations with him have been about his preparation for the summer. Like addressing things based on his development. Obviously, Sean can address the contract situation, but the way that we always focus is how can we develop a player. And just taking my first year of experience with him and my relationship is what am I going to do to help him get there. And Cam has done a great job. He looks great, his body, the way he's worked, and watching him play, pick up with his teammates. And I think that's the most important thing is focusing on what's in front of you and see him fight and compete at the highest level.
Yeah, just a second. What Jordi said, he's approached this in a very mature manner. It's part of the business. It's maybe the ugly part of the business when you can't find a common ground, but at the same time, how he's developed and the hours that he's put in the gym, not only here, but on his own, speak volumes. So, he's a net. He knows that. He's been very upfront, very mature, as I said before, about it. We've had very pleasant conversations throughout the summer about the process. I think we both sides understand what's at stake, but I also don't want to jump to conclusions just because a common ground couldn't be met this summer doesn't mean he's not a net in the future or throughout the season. So the hope is we go out there, as Jordi alluded to, everybody has an opportunity, everybody plays and competes, and that includes whether it's Cam or whether it's the young rooks or the two-ways.
A common ground not being able to be met, was that a product of, you would say, what his side was asking for, or your guys is not being willing to meet the number that he was at? What are some of the things that you'd like to see from him that maybe you haven't, that would make you comfortable with making that kind of commitment to him?
Yeah, well, I think common ground is exactly that, right? He's going to see it, his side is going to see it from one side and look out for the best interests of Cam, and we're going to look out for the best interests of the organization and flexibility and moving forward and so forth. I think it was handled, behind closed doors in a very mature manner from both sides, very upfront, very honest, very transparent. I think he has a chip on his shoulder like he always has. That's the way he plays, so we expect nothing else than for him to go out there and compete. Jordi is going to be the one that dictates sort of the playing style and the fit, whether it's Cam or whether it's anybody else. But I think Cam coming off, a bit of an injury-plagued season last season obviously didn't help him. I think he wants to come out and prove that he can stay robust and healthy, and I think the work that we've seen so far this summer would allude to just that.
Good morning, fellas. Good to see you both back. For the both of you, what would define success for the Brooklyn Nets this season in general from both of your perspectives?
Well, I think the goal is for us to go out there and compete. And, everybody from Jordi to the coaching staff, I mean, the way they've handled themselves this summer, we've had a good group of players spend, a lot of time this summer in Brooklyn, want to be in the gym, want to be around. I think that speaks volumes for what their expectations might be and how they want to prove people wrong. We've never listened to the naysayers. We don't listen to the Vegas odds. Go out there and compete. Success for us looks like how do we determine who are the next Nets? When we look back on this season, who developed at a rate that we think, okay, this person can be, a future Net for a long term. And that's what we're going to try and find. I mean, we know we've got some very young guys out there, and their development is a priority, just as it is, developing our 26, 27, and 28-year-olds. So it's a young team. They have a chip on their shoulder, and they'll follow this guy's competitive spirit, which is great.
Hi, Coach. What qualities of Fembo as a player stood out to you? And from your communication and interactions with him so far, what kind of impression did he make on you?
Well, we've only had him here for a day, so still getting into the process of getting to know each other, which is it's important for us, I think, to build that relationship. But shooting ability, positional size, those are things that stood up to me. And now excited to get to know him, see him fight in training camp, and go from there.
Hey, good morning to you both. Just a question for Sean. Going back to Cam a little bit, how would you assess the notion that maybe what the team did in the draft and acquiring, not all the same, but, a certain type of skill set in the draft this year and in some of the offseason moves maybe mesh or don't mesh with what we've seen from Cam in areas that maybe, you've said he has to improve upon, passing or just quick decision-making, that sort of thing?
Well, I think what you've seen from Cam over the course of the last year under Jordi and the coaching staff here, you've seen him try and adapt and try and change his game. I mean, we know what he's elite at. He's an elite scorer. We don't want to take any of that away from him. He knows that he's going to work on all facets of his game, but he's elite at what he does, and we don't want to take that away. And to be quite frank, I think he does fit with guys that end up moving the ball and positional size and the shooting that we have and the defense that we have. So, I think that's going to be the fun competition for camp. Like, what are the lineups that we're going to go with? Who fits better with whom? And those are things that I think either of us, we may have an idea, but you want to get through the next 2-3 weeks and then get into preseason games, and then you start determining, okay, what looks best, long term.
Hi, Jordi. Hi, Sean. Sean, a larger picture question for you about the Cam Thomas thing. Obviously, you guys weren't the only ones to go through this prolonged and kind of awkward restricted free agency period. I think we still have a few going on in other teams as well. Has restricted free agency tilted too much in the team's favor? And I know that might be awkward to ask you, but with kind of like free agency dying out a little bit, has it tilted too much in a team's favor where you have now an excess amount of leverage in what used to be, something created in a different cap and CBA environment?
Yeah. Well, speaking of caps, I'll put my team cap on, and building, through the team, we're always going to look at it like what are the opportunities that we may have, whether it's restricted free agency, and so forth. It may look right now like it may have tilted a little bit more in the team building favor simply because of the aprons and the new CBA and so forth, but it's not only our job to work within those constraints, but it's the agent and the players' jobs to try and figure out, okay, what's the best timing for them. So I think you'll see it all play out, and when there's more cap space available next year, more teams have it, more teams have more opportunity to pay players. I think answering this question a year from now might look vastly different. But when you have a relatively slow summer, and as you mentioned before, restricted free agency is still going on. It's pretty late in the game. So, yeah, as it stands right now, it's probably tilted a little bit more, but that's probably just the circumstances of where we find ourselves in this particular year.
Morning, guys. Drake Powell missed summer league with a knee injury. Where is he at with his health entering camp?
Yeah, he is back. He's not playing 5-on-5 as it stands now, but I mean, the hope is that he'll be in camp and doing drills and so forth. He didn't participate in open gym in that, and under those guides. But at the same time, we have no issues with him being held out of camp and so forth, and we'll build him up through there, and he should be good to go for hopefully the preseason games.
On the Michael Porter Jr. trade, I think a lot of the focus obviously been on the draft pick and the quality of that asset that you guys got. But on the MPJ front, what have you guys seen from him, on the court and, as a guy, personality-wise that convinced you that he could be, he's a piece that you wanted to go after and that he could be a piece who could be a long-term fit here?
Yeah, as Jordi mentioned before, the size for position. When you look at a guy like that who has elite skill, can shoot for being 6'8", 6'9", whatever he is, being able to play, that I think he fits with what we're trying to do here. From a personality standpoint, it's always interesting to trying to get to know these guys, right? It's early days yet. As we get through camp, we'll measure a guy's just how his competitive spirit, how he fits within the team, and so forth. But I think he's another player that has something to prove. Like he's played on a championship team, and obviously this is going to be a different market, a different environment for him, and probably different expectations laid out for him. But how he fits is going to be Jordi's decision.
Hey, Sean, just talking, you drafted your first top 10 pick this summer. Aside from the expectations that are tied to a top 10 pick usually, can you just talk about how Jaeger is going to fit in the culture here, specifically Jordi's culture and the identity of the team that he's trying to cultivate right now?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I would give a lot of credit to our scouting department. The amateur scouting department led by B.J. Johnson, I mean, they did a heck of a job. It was the first time I think any team has had 5 first-round picks with the ability to draft 5. We scoured the world, went through everything, and decided, drafting these guys is the right thing to do for building Brooklyn and building where we are right now. As it pertains to Jaeger, I don't think anybody's harder on him than himself, right? I mean, his expectations are high, and he wants to get out there. He's been a little bit limited with a plantar fascia tear after summer league, so he's been hasn't potentially had the summer that he would have loved, but at the same time. Size, position, the way he plays, the way he sees the game, and so forth. Really enjoyed being around him and looking forward to getting him out there and seeing what he can do.
Jordi, when we talked to you guys at the end of the season, you talked a lot about development this offseason and how important it was going to be for a lot of guys on this roster. What have you noticed from those guys as they're starting to come back and, the work that they put in, especially the ones that, were here last season and are returning?
Yeah, I think the word is commitment, and the good thing is there's a lot more corporate knowledge on what we're trying to achieve, right, as a group, and building those relationships. Now we've been able to follow everyone's summer. As you know, this has been like all volunteer and so forth, and you look at, and you guys will see it, but not just CT's body, but also Dayron. Noah looks like a man, and he's been working really hard. Jalen, Tyrese, I could go down the line that the guys have put their work in, and they're ready for camp, and using this summer, to get something, positive for yourself, but also positive for the group. So very happy how things went, how the coaching staff worked, how the players have been committed to that development, and now reality starts now that it's fight and compete for something. And like I said before, everybody has something to fight for, whether it's a starting position, a rotation position, a spot on the roster, or a two-way, and that's exciting.
Back on Cam, with him signing the QO, and as Brian said, historically there's been a tendency of those guys departing, and it being a contract year for him. What have the conversations been like with him about his approach to what the team goals are versus what might be his personal goals, and him looking to secure his next deal and wherever that may be?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of those conversations we would certainly keep internal. You can imagine he had the same questions for us like we have for him, and I think what we're trying to really define is commitment to the team, commitment to playing the right way, to playing within Jordi's system and style, but at the same time, as I mentioned before, he has an elite skill set that we're going to need and we're going to capitalize and use, and he's well aware of that, as the rest of the league is what he's able to do out there on the court. So we certainly don't want to inhibit him from doing what he does, but at the same time, is like, how does he take another step in his game? And that's the same for everybody. It's I know we're focused on Cam right now, but it's everybody. As Jordi mentioned before, guys have taken some pretty good strides this summer, being in the gym, Cam being one of them. You mentioned Noah before. Certain guys have really started to develop and grow into their bodies. And again, it's you can't measure this, and the more these guys get to play together and compete, that's what's exciting for I think both of us right now. And to be honest, for the team that's out there, they're excited to get out there and knock heads with one another and then take it into preseason games.
And this could be for either of you. Cam Johnson obviously had an important leadership role in the locker room last year and really stepped into that. And now you have, older guys who are veterans coming in, like Terrence, like MPJ, whoever you want to say, with, the biggest rookie first-round class in history. What have the conversations been like with those guys, those new veterans coming in, about what their role is, for showing these guys the ropes, showing them how to be a pro, anything along those lines?
Well, Jordy's had more of those conversations, but this is a little bit uncharted territory for all of these guys, right? Whether it's Terrence coming in or MPJ or whoever coming in from other teams, they weren't necessarily leaders before. So this is an opportunity for them to grow in that department. It's also an opportunity for our incumbent players to step up in that department. And I think it wouldn't be beneficial for us to right now to say, well, here's your leadership group, here's who the captains are, here's how they play. Like, that's the fun part of training camp. That's the fun part of getting in there and you seeing how all the pieces fit together, both in the locker room and on the court. Two quite different things, right? So for us, I wouldn't want to say put some guy in a box right now and say this is who this person's going to be. It'll be a work in progress, but the leader of the group is that guy.
Fellas, good morning. You guys are already going to come into the season with basically a brand new point guard rotation, and then the deal for Kobe happened. What was the motivation for adding him to the team, especially when you got so many young guys at that spot?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a little bit of where we are in our life cycle of building when you have an opportunity to add a young guy who, we were high on at the draft, didn't have the opportunities that he thought he may have in the first couple years in the league through injuries and whatnot, but it's an opportunity for us to take a look at him, and where we are in our build. It's like the more assets and the more young guys we have, the more we can accumulate and really take a look and get them out there, and as sort of maybe the buzzwords being compete and fight for a spot. That's what we want to see.
Hi, Jordi. This is for you. You have MPJ on the roster this year. Obviously, in his previous stop, he was more kind of a complimentary player, like a high-level complimentary player, but nonetheless, it seems like he would be maybe the go-to scorer here, to use that term. How do you figure out what a player can do as you try to kind of level up their role, and how to create an offense that more takes advantage of those skills, and how to basically scale them up from something they had not done consistently over their how many ever years he's been in the league?
Yeah, it's a good question because you just said it. It's going to be a new job for him. And at the end of the day, everybody's got just a job for the group. And it's a job that if we all do our jobs, we'll be successful as a group. In an NBA team, you need somebody that grabs rebounds, and you need somebody that takes shots. You need somebody that shares the ball. You need somebody that plays. You need somebody that doesn't play and that is ready to play. So I think those roles are important. Those will be communicated after training camp, at least the beginning of training camp, so everybody knows their role or their jobs in a simple way. And like you said, Michael is shaping towards that, right? Like he's an elite shooter, positional size, like Sean said, great rebounder and great cutter. And the good thing is I have a previous relationship with him, so that makes it a little easier for me. But I'm gonna ask him to do things that he's never done before, and for those reasons. And I think that he's up for the challenge. Once again, it's not gonna be given to him. It's not a starting spot is not given to him. Minutes are not given to him or anybody else. So he knows that as well, and he's excited to show everybody else, not just me, but everybody, what he's able to do.
For both of you guys, I'd be interested in your thoughts on Noah Summer, digging in on him a little bit more specifically, the work that he's put in, the changes you've noticed, but also the opportunity that he has in front of him here this season.
Yeah, well, he just turned 21. I don't know if you guys know, but going into his third NBA season with all the experience he has, and as young as he is, and now he looks like a grown man, is a person that we trust. We trust in his work ethic, his commitment, how his body looks right now, how his shot looks right now, and trying to improve those drive decisions. That is where he got himself in trouble a little bit last season. So very happy where he's at right now. Excited to watch him compete, and go from there.
This is for whoever wants to answer it, can provide more insight. MPJ's obviously had a summer of some media appearances, speaking on his own vlog, and said some things that have generated a lot of media attention, perhaps controversial. I'm just curious how the organization, how the team maybe responded, didn't respond to that, if there were conversations with him, I guess how that kind of played out within this building.
Yeah, we've again those conversations that myself and a group have had with Michael will remain internal. I think this is, as Jordi alluded to, a new environment for him, a new market, new expectations, new roles, both on the court and in the locker room for him. So I think he's finding his way. I think I think we'll just basically leave it at that. But I mean, he knows where the organization stands on certain issues and topics, and this market is a little different than where he was.
Just quite more added context about the Yegor injury or whatever he's been dealing with. Like, what has he been able to do, and is he full go entering camp, or are there limitations?
He'll be limited for the first part of camp, what he's going to be going, but hopefully there's a build up through the first couple of weeks here, and that he gets out there. But we have no issues with thinking he's going to miss start of the season or anything like that.